All right, ready, Bon?
We are.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Be the Ultimate Assistant podcast with Bonnie and Vickie. I'm Vickie Sokol Evans.
And I am Bonnie Low-Kramen. And this is April 22nd, 2021. We are in Administrative Professionals Week, one that is like no other that I've ever had in my career. It's been pretty different, hasn't it, Vic?
The last two APWs have been very different.
So different. And so I want to just share with everyone and welcome to everyone coming into the show. Your comments and questions are welcome as we talk about HR celebrating executive assistants. Back in January, some of you perhaps saw the podcast that Vickie and I did with the CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., and SHRM's chief of staff, Emily Dickens. And it was a really interesting conversation that we had. And that event led to today, when we thought there was just so much interest in SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Managers, and management rather, and how HR is working with, collaborating with, cooperating with executive assistants, because my goodness, during this pandemic, the light has been shown directly on HR. They've been put in the real hot seat with everything going on with the pandemic, and as have been the executive assistants who were told in, with 5 minutes notice, go home. And it's just been volatile. In fact, it's been what I've heard of as VUCA. VUCA is a term that was new on me this year, but apparently it's been around for a long time, and it's an acronym, and it stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And leaders have been talking about what's been happening over this last year and a half as VUCA. It's a VUCA world is what these CEOs will say. And it's an Army term that refers to the notion that in a VUCA situation like this pandemic, that leaders are forced to think up new strategies, out of the box thinking to respond to what's happening. Now, just as leaders are doing that, so have executive assistants, and so has HR. So there's a lot of new things that we have to talk about. And so Vickie and I put our heads together to think about the experts we could bring in to continue this conversation. Before I introduce our first guest, and Vickie will introduce our second guest, I want to welcome our listeners, Carol and Ruth. Welcome to the show. We're talking about HR celebrating EAs. We welcome your questions and comments throughout. We are going to go till 3 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a wonderful, delicious, meaty time to be able to wrestle some of the issues that are happening in our workplace. So Vickie, do you have anything to say before I introduce our first guest?
I can't think of two better groups to work together than the administrative professionals and HR. So this is what we're bringing together, and we're bringing to you like a meal, like delicious. I'm starting to get hungry just by saying that. So we're serving up a delicious buffet today.
Yeah. And, between our two guests, they have 60 years experience. So I have the great pleasure of introducing our first guest. She has been a member of SHRM for 44 years. For 33 years, she worked as an SHRO, a CHRO, a Chief Human Resources Officer. And we'll probably use that acronym quite a bit. I suspect she will. And early on in her career, she actually worked as an executive assistant. So this is a lady who totally knows her stuff. And I have to say, I had such it was so fun speaking with her in prep for today, because she's so passionate about this work. She is equally passionate about human resources as she is about executive assistants and about how, so there, it's just such a wonderful person to come on. She, in her current role at SHRM, I know she is speaking constantly. She's out there on the road, and she is responsible for member acquisition and retention. She has 35 years experience with domestic and international experience in all aspects of human resources and training, and extensive experience with strategic planning, mergers and acquisitions, and in starting and turning around businesses. And you know what's great? Jen is going to be putting her LinkedIn profile link in the chat. So if you want to stay in touch, which I suspect you will. She has her MBA from Upper Iowa University and an undergrad from Edison State College in New Jersey. So yay, Jersey. You all know I'm a Jersey girl. In her career, she's received many awards. One of them was the HR Award of Excellence Hospitality in 2016 from the South Florida Business and Wealth. She happens to live in South Florida. She serves on boards, and many boards, and one of them is she chairs SHRM's governance and compensation committees. So as we talked, it was like nothing about the workplace did she not have a deep knowledge about, including compensation, which of course we know as EAs is a burning issue. So please let us give a great BTUA virtual welcome to Mary Cheddie.
Hey everybody, so glad to be here today.
Hi, Mary. Welcome, welcome. All right, Vickie, please introduce our next guest.
Absolutely. And just in case anyone doesn't know, SHRM stands for the Society of HR Management, and HR is human resources, just to clear that up. Great. Nice to see you, Mary. We'll be talking to you in just a second. I'd like to introduce our second guest is Karen Peloquin. She's a native of Massachusetts and has been an administrative professional for over 25 years. She currently is an executive assistant at Takeda Pharmaceuticals for the past 5 years. She moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts biotech industry in the late 1990s when it was just a blip on the map. And she supported the head of HR for 11 years when she worked for Genzyme Corporation. So she's got some HR background as well. So in her current role at Takeda, Karen helped develop an EA steering committee called Takeda USA Administrative Team. And then we're going to ask her a lot about that because it's super interesting what she and her team created. But on a personal note, Karen has one biological son of Ethiopian descent and is raising the bar on issues of diversity and justice. Karen enjoys travel, and like us, she's very ready to start traveling the world again. And she and her son will take on lots of adventures when the globe opens up again. Welcome, Karen.
Hi everyone.
Hi, yes. Hi, Karen. Oh, welcome.
Nice to see you all. Yes. Thank you.
We're so fortunate to have both of you here with Vickie and me. And I want to welcome our viewers and listeners from all over the world. They are friends of BTUA and know they bring so much experience to this room as well. So we welcome your comments and questions, Marion and Ruth and Carol and everyone on the call. Mary, I'd love to start with you. Mary, as in your opening, I shared that you were a CHRO for 33 years and you serve on the SHRM board and you have such deep experience. Could you please talk for a few minutes about your point of view on the executive assistant role and where you see it heading, you know, in terms of talking through the bridges that we can build between HR and EAs?
Absolutely. First, let me clarify. I served on the SHRM Board of Directors from 2003 to 2008. And it was during that time when I was on the board that I chaired the governance committee and then the HR and comp committee. I'm not on the SHRM board now. I am on SHRM staff, and I am living my passion, being able to serve and support the HR profession. And so it's a pleasure to be here today. And going back to your question, during my career, it's been so important that my EA and I are joined absolutely at the hip. I can't operate fully and completely functional without an exceptional EA. I look at them as my left hand and my right hand and my legs. And it's just such a pivotal relationship that's so critical. Not many executives understand that. However, as a result of the pandemic and the shutdown where almost everybody had to work remote, that was a very important time for executives who didn't truly value their EAs before to understand how much they relied and they needed that EA day in and day out. And I've worked for many CEOs who have always said, EAs can never work remote. They need to be right there with us. Well, guess what? They've been proven wrong. And that relationship is so critical. I never, ever asked an EA to do something of a personal nature for me. I valued them too much. They were my business partner. And just as a special shout out, I have had 6 EAs during my 41 years in the workforce that I just want to shout out. Terry Grasso, Benita Munoz, who now is a director and holds a high-level management position in her organization. Sherry Anderson, who went on to work in a different industry and became a managing director. Mashera Urshri, who now is a vice president of residential real estate in an organization. Lisa Tarosi and Anna Espinal, who now is the manager of HR for her organization. So in addition to the partnerships, I wanted my EAs to go as far as they wanted to go, whether they wanted to be an EA, that was their ultimate goal, to be the very best, because that's critically needed, or if they wanted something else. And so that journey has been exceptional, and it's been a lot of fun. So Bonnie, where would you like to go next?
Well, what are you, well, let's go on to Karen, and then we'll come back to, you know, let me just ask you one thing before we go to Karen, and that's about training, Mary. Historically, assistants have had to fight for training dollars. Do you see the change of mindset happening among leaders about that too? That in addition, they're valuing their assistant, and now they're also thinking, oh, you know what, we better invest in some training here.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking about that?
Absolutely. And along with that, there are certain skills that each EA position is required to have just to walk in the door. But then there are other skills based on your organization that are so important that we spend and provide the training for the EA. And I look at it this way, Bonnie. The EA is an extension of me. I want them to know everything I know. I want them to be able to do anything I can do. And to take it further, when I'm in a call or when I'm tied up and somebody contacts my EA needing me, I want my EA to be able to speak on my behalf, to feel confident and knowledgeable about what they're speaking about, to be able to answer it. Think about the efficiency of that. There's nothing worse than calling someone and be told, I'll let her know you called. She'll call you back later, or she'll call you back when she gets a chance. Now, that's a put off, and maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next week, maybe it's never. And when my EA can say, oh yes, Mary and I talked about that. Here's the strategy. These are the next action points, and these are the deliverables that we need from you in 2 days. That's the win-win. And that's why that partnership, that training, that education, and that development of the EA is so critical. So I do see that opening up, and I've seen that opening up even more so as a result of the pandemic.
Cool. I mean, we'll probably touch again on that training issue because that's such a hot button. But Vic, let's help us hear from Karen.
Yeah. So Karen, I do want to go back to your bio and kind of talk to you a little more about the internal network that you created that you helped create at Takeda. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and your vision, what's happening with them?
Sure. Yes. Well, I've been at Takeda now for 5 years, and just a couple of years ago, there was a little bit of a transition with the administrative team and group that was, helping out with putting events together for the company. And so there was a change of the leadership in the team. And so I was approached to help out and really think about what it would be like to help administrators in their careers. And so this small group of us, we thought about it, and we created sub-teams. We created an events committee. We created a technology committee. And then I was asked to lead up the professional development committee just because of my HR background. And I love to mentor. I love to be able to interact with administrators on any level when they come into the job. And so what we did was we created our sub-team to start thinking about what would be important for administrators to grow in their roles. So one of the things that we worked on was goals for administrators, because a lot of us, we don't have those goals, or the goals are not really, seeming to be as important, which is what we need to also change, is that our goals are just as important as the goals of the company, our bosses, our managers, not our bosses, our managers, etc. And so we also helped out with quality conversations. How do we, have sub team meetings to help administrators together, not in their teams. And then, just having Bonnie come into our company and doing a powerful program about, we're not just an admin, we're a team player. And, myself and Klaus Jepsen, my manager, we were a part of that program. And, I must say, I really love his way of thinking, which is that we are a partner. We always are a partner. And what was surprising to me at that time, too, was that other people's don't, other administrators and managers don't feel that way at times. And that's where I feel as though that really needs to close the gap.
What are some of the results that came about besides setting the goals on the other committees? Did you see any objectives being reached that helped the team, helped the organization?
Right. So the measuring of what we have been doing. So our technology team has been putting out, trainings for the teams, so I feel that the uptick is that we have a lot more engagement in the administrators at working from home than in the office, because as administrators, we're always being tagged in the office to do something. But now we have the time at home to take time for ourselves. So development, it's at their fingertips, and it's about administrators being able to see what's at their fingertips. So for instance, in the office, they might have training on Teams or even other development programs. And then outside of the organization, there's events that could be, especially interesting to individuals. And then, and I speak a lot. I really loved Mary earlier and how she spoke about how her team and her EAs have really risen. But there's also the other team that is really happy being in the EA world. And how do we just create them to go from the admin, the senior admin, the EA, the executive coordinator, and that's their passion as well.
I have a question about that, Karen. Is that an idea? Has that been considered a new idea? That's being referred to as career growth, a career progression. Someone starts as an administrative assistant and then can work their way up to a senior executive assistant. Are those ideas being spurred by the steering committee, and have you involved HR yet in those? Is it too early in those conversations? Can you give us a sense of where you are with it?
Sure. Yeah. In HR, we're just in the early stages of really a partnership. As I said earlier, we've been maybe a year and a half, I would say, as a strong team, as a steering committee. And I did approach one of the leads of the U.S. HR organization months ago, and she is now the head of our HR organization. And she was the one that really, said, yes, we want to partner with you on the professional development side, and we want to be able to work with you. So we have an assigned HR person to help us in the steering committee to answer questions, to be able to, just move things forward. So we are in a infancy stage, but we're in a great place. I'm excited because, as we know with HR, if you partner together, then this makes it something. So even as a team, we could just be that ad hoc team, but when you have HR in an organization that is supporting you, we are something. We're a whole team now. That's how I personally feel. Yes.
I do have a follow-up question to that, and this one's for Mary. So Karen, thanks for that transition. So obviously, Mary, in today's workplace with the pandemic and working from home, HR needs as much help as any other team. And are you seeing initiatives where assistants are supporting HR and vice versa? And if not, do you see what are the opportunities that that assistants can take to better support HR and vice versa, HR supporting EAs and EAs supporting HR?
Great question, Vickie. And yes, I see the opportunities as being massive. So a couple of things. As an EA, if your person that you're partnering with isn't giving you more to do, isn't looping you in and including you, be the aggressor. How can I help? What more can I do? I want to learn more. I've never heard of a supervisor when someone says, I want to learn more, they say, too bad, so sad. I've never heard of that yet, because there's already probably some jerk out there. But anyway, and so there's the opportunities, so ask. And yes, Vickie, I do see more and more involvement. This is not related to the pandemic, but this was back at my last CHRO role. My executive assistant, I put her through training to be trained on how to conduct internal investigations, because often there were many investigations and I just didn't have the HR staff to do the legwork and the investigation that was needed. There was no one more trusting on my team than my EA, and I trust her implicitly at conducting that investigation and providing me with feedback, insights, and recommendations. Obviously, if you're working for someone who's not giving you opportunities, who has refused to give you opportunities, does not communicate with you, and just keeps you out of the picture, it's time to brush up that resume and look for a new opportunity. You're not going to change, if I could just say the word again, a jerk. You're not going to change them. You're going to waste your time in an environment working for someone who doesn't value you. There are so many other leaders out there who will value you, who will work with you, who will develop you, who will train you. Don't waste your time. Don't look back on those years and say, if only, because that's what we all don't want to do. Vickie, am I on target? Anything further you want me to expound upon?
No, that's great. And what about HR departments? I mean, can EAs knock on their door and say, hey, I've got some extra free time, or hey, I have an idea, and vice versa? Can HR, like, wow, we got this project, how do we get more buy-in? How do we get more engagement? Reaching out to the EA networks that they have, so the groups themselves connecting.
Absolutely. And not only can the EA reach out to the other team members in HR, but oftentimes someone comes to want to talk to the CHRO or your leader based on who you're supporting, and they have some dirt that they want to spill, and they want to get it off their chest. You're the holder of some very important information at that point. You have the ability to help resolve that situation or to ruin it. Take that information, take it to the right person, talk to them, come forward, not with the problem or the issue, but with your ideas and recommendations on how to resolve it. you want to be able to increase your value perception by those with whom you're working with. And one of the best ways is to come forward with ideas. Karen, comment on that, please. What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that as an administrator, I might be off track here though, Mary. I was thinking as you were speaking, that in order for, again, I might be a little bit off, but I was really focusing on what I think is great for an administrator to really, bring forward into the HR arena, which is your goals. I mean, I'm really big on that because I think we need to measure ourselves. And I think that the partnership and what you were saying earlier about being a partner with someone and, if they are not in the task of, having a manager who is, helping them along the way or is really, not considering that person a partner. I really agree with that, Mary. However, I still feel that that's where HR needs to step in and help us as administrators with those managers. That is, if an administrator is saying, I'm not a partner, let's figure out why is that happening? Why is it that that manager doesn't have the skill set themselves to partner with us? So isn't it a two-way street, do you think, Mary and others? Is that, again, when I had the event with Bonnie, my manager was saying that I was that person to him, exactly as you explained it. I can answer questions and so on.
Yeah, it definitely is a two-way street. And sometimes the supervisors just don't know what they don't know. And they need an education and an awareness.
That's right.
And sometimes they need to hear from somebody outside the company, like go take a plane ride, talk to the person you're sitting next to on the plane, because we know that that's where a lot of CEOs come back with great ideas, aren't really all that great, but
Yes.
why is it that oftentimes people will listen to outsiders as opposed to those inside who know and understand the most intimate workings of the organization?
Yeah.
And so, yes, it goes both ways. Absolutely.
It's a stigma, and obviously Bonnie and Vickie, you bring this out into the front and the forefront. It is a stigma. I also think that sometimes, administrators, we got a little feed in the back there. I think that administrators coming into companies, they're also not, they can be, not, do I want to say beaten down, but their level of, ego is really crushed a lot of times because they don't feel that. And so then again, I go back to, how do the managers, work with us as a partner, right?
Yeah, obviously the biggest challenge is when that manager that doesn't really value the EA is your CEO. Or like the executive of sales for an organization. And so that's where you really need to get HR involved. I've had many, many, many tough conversations with CEOs and some high executives of sales about working and partnering with their EA. At one organization, the executive vice president of sales, and my doorbell's going to ring and my dog is going to start barking. I'm going to apologize. But at one organization, the sales executive went through 10 EAs in 30 days. And I sat down with him and I said, what's the issue? He couldn't explain it. He couldn't define it. I refused to accept that. So what I did is I sat with him and I said, you're not going anywhere. We're going to define exactly what it is you need and want. What are your expectations? Then I brought in somebody, didn't let him interview the person at all. This person really was a great fit with the culture and really was a great fit for his expectations. I sat the two of them down and I said, sales executive, these are the expectations. Awesome EA, these are the expectations. Why don't you provide insight to the salesperson on your understanding of the expectations? And we're going to have a daily meeting every morning at 8:30 for the first 30 days of employment. And then after the first 30 days, she was still there and he was happy. Do you know that after 6 months on the job, he nominated her for one of the highest employee awards that we gave in our company? And that's where, as the CHRO, did I need to take my time and my commitment to do that? No, but that is who I am. And I wanted that EA to succeed. She's a beautiful person. She cares. She's got a family. I don't want her beat up every night. I don't want her to go home and say, oh, that crappy company, oh, that crappy boss. I want her to be proud of us and our organization. I don't want the sales executive back on my door saying, fire her, get rid of her. She's not working out. So it took an intervention. And sometimes that's needed. And I will do whatever it takes to ensure the success of our people.
And if I can bounce here, Bonnie, for a second.
Yeah, please. I have a comment too about that, but I don't know what you have to say about that, Karen.
Yeah, and then what is really, really powerful about that as well is that the residual effect goes down, right? So the learning of the CEO, as we know, like you said earlier, it just comes down into the tier of the organization, and the respect that he has for him, then it also matters to a lot more people. And then the other piece of that is that what I've been able to do in my career is mentor my administrators about communicating with your manager, being able to, prepare yourself to be a professional, to walk in the door or have that conversation with your manager. If you've been working with a manager for 4-6 months at least, the rhythm of how they like to work. And if you don't, you should find that out, where he's understanding you and you're understanding them, right? So if my boss likes it very quick, short, boom, so that's what I provide to him. But then someone else wants more data, more information. So that's another way of an EA to be able to succeed. But I love your story about the CEO. That's really great.
Mary's getting a lot of love in the chat here for that story. Denise is giving you a big shout out. Mary, I'm so curious to know, are you a unicorn, or are there other HR professionals who have done similar things, like maybe not for 30 days, but your story speaks to expectations, and it speaks to giving somebody onboarding that matters. It's kind of like taking someone metaphorically by the hand and saying, this is how you do this. Let me help you for a little while, and then you get to run. Were you a unicorn, or are there other people who did similar through your career?
I'm not a unicorn, Bonnie. I'm just plain old Mary. And I value each and every person. Every person is so valuable. And I am the example of what I want others to be. And I treat and I love to work with anybody and everybody. Now, there are many HR people who actually, part of why I got into HR was because of all the incompetent people that were in HR. I knew that whatever it was that they were supposed to be doing, I could do a whole lot better. But let's just face it, in every profession, in every walk of life, there are people that aren't nice people. There are people who don't care about anybody but themselves. And so, we go from there. How can we make a difference? Is making a difference important to you? Is making an impact important on the lives of those around you? As a CHRO, I stayed up many, many nights. If I got 2 hours of sleep, that was a lot. And even now, what value do I add? How can I make your life better? What impact am I making to enrich the life of our employees, of their families, and the world that we serve? That's how I look at it, Bonnie. And there are many other fantastic HR people out there that look at it the very same way. And if you're in an organization that you don't have that, I apologize. Send them my way. I'll be glad to help coach them. I'll be glad to connect them with somebody that can help them. But at the end of the day, if their heart is hardwired to think of no one but themselves, it's going to take more than what I can do to help them see the light.
Right. I mean, Karen, with this steering committee, it sounds like you have a rep from HR right there. That has to be really helpful to have somebody from HR right there so that, I keep thinking of the image of bridges, that we're building bridges and, we've got this volatile workplace out there. So much has changed. In my presentations, I put up a slide called New Rules. It feels like there's so much new in the workplace. Karen, have you and HR, have you had some interesting conversations in the steering committee and with the newness of what's going on in the world?
Yes, we have. I think we've, what we've done as a steering committee is we have provided these tools for administrators to use, to engage them, to be able to help them grow and build in their own skill sets and so on. With HR, again, we're a little bit in the infancy stage, but actually this opportunity here has been inspiring me and to really work a little bit harder to get into HR. But I think we're doing a really fantastic job as a team of building up the administrators. And just the simple tools of, who are the administrators in the organization and where are they? Sometimes we lose sight of that, and I feel like we're really building that bridge together a lot stronger. So I can't comment too much more on that, Bonnie. It's still a little bit more in the infancy.
But HR is receptive. And
oh, absolutely.
Did you get, and let me just say this, that welcome to Lizzie and our newer guests who've come in. Lizzie's coming in from France. We have quite the international crowd. We welcome your comments and questions about building bridges between executive assistants and HR. Given all the changes that have happened in the workplace, I don't know, from where I sit, leaders have never been so open to new ideas than right now. That's what I'm hearing. Karen, before I turn this back to Vickie with her next question for you, did you experience any pushback, Karen, from the leadership to create the steering committee in the first place when the idea was pitched? Because there may be people listening who are thinking, maybe we should have a steering committee which can act as kind of like a go-between between management and HR and like that.
Great question. And thank you for asking that. So we did this little ad hoc team and we just kept trudging along. And I must say our secretary of the team who's been steering us quite a bit, we have executive assistants that are working for the leaders of our organization. And so after about a 6 months period of time, you could feel the shift as to how we became that team. We were feeling, and we were having things where it was feeling like we were becoming something as a team. And then we started to shout out ourselves. We said, this is what we're doing. And people took notice. So it wasn't like we had to do this on our own. And it's not that I'm sure that the organization would want to support us, because I do really and passionately love my organization. They're very kind. But, sometimes you have to go out there and create something for yourself as administrators and then show them who you are. And so we did. We are, a professional development team. Who knows about that in an organization for administrative? Mary, you're shaking, right? It's like, it doesn't really happen. And so I'm very, very proud of my own, push forward to get us to this place. And now we become, first we were all clumped together, and then now we're our own sub teams, and we're really strong at what we're doing. We meet monthly, as a matter of fact, if not every other week. So for my team, I have had events where it's just my team and we develop ourselves. We look at what's in the organization that can be provided to others. And so we do have some work to do to push it out, but yeah, we develop ourselves as well along the way.
So Karen, what kind of tools, you talked about tools, but what, my mind always goes to technology. How are you leveraging technology to bring everyone together to accomplish your objectives? Can you give us some examples? Are you guys, great, go.
Yeah. We have tools inside of Takeda, which are e-learning tools. So we have WeLearn, there's a Harvard mentorship program that we need to look at again. We're also building, my team, two of the team members are now building up events that are held around the globe or even just in the USA to go to. And Bonnie, you're on our list to continue with the education. But yeah, we have a lot of great tools inside of Takeda, for technology, along with, just learning about different cultures. So yeah, we're digging into that. Mm-hmm.
Are you guys using sites, a workspace? How are you communicating? Are you doing surveys, polls? How are you getting the word out about your group? How do people know about you? What are you using to promote you guys?
We have events. We have over, hundreds of people that do come to our events, and so it's just been word of mouth. And then, we don't do surveys. But we hear about it through, the steering committee. Yeah.
Okay, so these events are kind of like lunch and learns. It's you guys are hosting it, and then you're inviting employees to attend it.
Oh, so for instance, what we do is our events committee are now partnering with our facilities group, our HR group, our IT group, and so when there's some new technology that comes out, some new processes that comes out, we host them. So they have their own hosting, but then we come together as a team. So that's one part of it. But then again, the WeLearn and how you learn on your own. Mm-hmm.
So that's a tip for any department, IT or HR, who wants to get administrative buy-in from the administrative staff, is to have them host, co-host, collaborate on an event together. I love that idea. Thank you.
Because we're the ones that are using the tools. A lot of times we're forgotten about, and we're the ones using the tools, right? And then I think if you leave it individually for an administrator to go to a class, sometimes it just falls off, and especially in this virtual world. But then if you bring them together, I think our team really, you can feel that they want to learn as a group.
Well, I go back to your bio about your son being from Ethiopia, and that it's such an interesting fact about you. And I almost see a benefit. Well, I see a benefit in team spotlighting an administrator once a month and just talk about the award. You even won some awards. Tell us about the awards that you won. I didn't list them in your bio.
I didn't put them. Sometimes you forget. I don't remember. But yeah, when I have had multiple vice president awards for all of the times that I have, jumped in. I've jumped into a project and just said, I'm passionate about this. And, there was even one where we had Lesley University has a great program where you mentor, children. I'm not sure I know the political way to say it, but they have learning disabilities. So we've had them in our organization to help out there. And so just always jumping in and doing the extra on there.
I think that just inspires the idea for any HR department to spotlight an EA or administrator once a month and talk about their career, their expertise, something fun fact about them, who they support in the organization, when to contact them, like ask me about travel reimbursement or whatever the responsibilities that they have. I like the idea of spotlighting and promoting someone's background and introducing them to the staff, even if it's not all employees, maybe just the team. So you inspired that, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah, and with my son with an Ethiopian descent, I think, unfortunately in our world, there's a lot of people that are considered underprivileged or not thought of as important, or, we had just, this big trial that happened where justice was served, in my opinion, of, we need to step up to the plate. And Mary, you were saying earlier about how of a person you are, and it's true. It starts from within. So if I can get a little spiritual and, and it's everyone is equal. I have a friend who's a chef, and, they sometimes have their own challenges with being thought of as important in their own industry. So everyone is equal. Everyone is a part of this world, and no matter skin, race, whatever it is. And so, and administrators sometimes fall into that little bit of a bucket, and that's where we need to rise ourselves up. And these events are so important to be able to speak up. So, thank you.
Mary, do you have a comment about what just happened with Karen? But, I suspect that SHRM, the technology certainly is a place where a bridge can be drawn between EAs and HR. Are you finding that at SHRM in any particular way?
Technology can provide great leverage and abilities to not only build but cement those bridges firmly in place. And I want to go back to one thing that Karen said. With the technology and with the learning opportunities that your organization offers, don't wait for someone to say, oh, hey, why don't you take this class? Where you got the abilities and the opportunities, go for it. There's a saying that a lot of people use. It's easier to say that I'm sorry than may I. And when it comes to learning, my philosophy has always been, I must learn like I'm going to live forever, but I must live like today is my last day on this earth. And I just want to go back to one other thing about the verdict of the trial. I know many of us watched George Floyd horrifically be murdered in cold blood. It was not right. And this is not about police or not police, but even though justice was served with the verdict of the trial, George Floyd is still dead. Many others are still dead. 7 days after George Floyd was murdered, SHRM launched Together Forward at Work, an initiative to drive out workplace racism and bias once and for all. I've been leading a task force for SHRM. We've put on 27 webinars about this, and we continue to work this effort. Never when I started my career did I think that 45 years later, I was still going to be fighting this fight. But it starts at the family. You can try driving out workplace bias and racism, but you've got to start at the family and in your communities and in your clubs and in your environments. That's where it starts. And if I know that that's not what this episode is about, so I'll get off my bandwagon, but it's so important. Everyone is equal. Everyone deserves to be treated. Those who are convicted, they are not their crime. They are still a living soul. What they did was wrong. They've been served with justice. We have a program at SHRM, Getting Talent Back to Work, for those who were formerly incarcerated, to help bring them back to work. And that's a program I believe strongly in. I've hired many people who came out of incarceration, and they've been some of the best employees ever.
Well, thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. And yesterday on Heads Together, we talked about it as well. I feel sure, everyone knows what you're talking about, who's on this call right now, and the people on our executive assistants. And one of the things, and of course, I agree completely with you, assistants of the world know that diversity on teams is excellent, and that that collaboration and cooperation is way, way better than conflict and keeping in silos. So there's one thing about that case to say, and then I'm going to turn it back to Vic. I think about Darnella Frazier, the 17-year-old who took the video of what happened, which had everything to do with the outcome. It had, that everyone agrees on that. And here's the thing, she's 17. She didn't know what the result was of following her instincts to document. And I believe every assistant on this call can relate to that idea, that there are things that happen in our day-to-day work life. Sometimes it's documenting workplace bullying. Sometimes it's documenting sexual harassment. Sometimes it's just following an instinct and saying, you know what, I think I would just want to take a note about what was said on this date at that meeting, because you're in HR, Mary, like documentation is everything. And I'm here to say executive assistants have an opportunity every day to yes, use those good instincts and to document things that your gut is telling you to document about, and even knowing that you have no idea what the result may end up being, but very often something is needed from the documentation that you're keeping. So thank you again, Mary, for bringing that up.
And I'd like to comment just briefly on that too. Takeda, after George Floyd's murder, really became very aggressive in helping with bringing a diversity, inclusion, new head into our organization, who I did recruit and have come into the organization. And next week, we are having a full week of diversity events throughout the organization that has been supported by our CEO. And it's a 1-week program to educate and help us understand where our prejudice may be.
Yeah.
How we can get rid of those biases. So we're very excited about next week. And it's going to be an exciting week for us. And that's our focus.
That's fantastic.
And you know what?
Yeah.
You know what else? Mary was mentioning incarcerated people who come out of prison and we're getting them back to work. Vickie and I are going to be doing a program for military spouses, of veterans or active duty in the armed forces. We're talking about constituencies in our workplace who can be marginalized, but that there's so much good that can happen if we find the way to bridge between them. It's not black and white. And we've heard about, it's not only black and white, it's about the Asian community that's been in the spotlight recently. So, I think it's really important to know that, and physical disabilities, and there are different constituencies that get marginalized. Melissa, I think, commented in the chat that there's one more point, and then I'm going to turn it over. What I see in this last year and a half is that, the theme here is communication between the groups, that our leaders need to know what's going on with EAs, and HR needs to know what's going on with leaders and EAs, and recruiters need to know what's going on with all the groups as well. So we have a need for bridges all over the place, and only good can happen. And that's why I was so excited to bring Karen in to talk about the steering committee she's doing. It's like, oh, what a concept. Why don't we bring HR right into the group so we can actually talk to them? Because honestly, what Vickie and I have heard over these 10 years of teaching B2A is that there's far too much not talking to each other and imagining what's going on and not having any real information. So.
And they're a great counsel too at the same time. They're a counsel. They help us to move. I'm really looking forward to really taking more time with our HR sponsor, just to help her navigate too. Mm-hmm.
And if I may just add one other comment, it's more than just diversity. It's diversity, it's equity, it's access, and it's inclusion. Mm-hmm. All 4 of those bring everything full picture to create great work environments where everybody can be the very, very best. And having those conversations is very hard. If you go to togetherforward@work.org, we have free conversation starter cards that you can download to start those conversations. And I'll put it in our backroom chat. So Bonnie and Vickie, you can feel free to share that with the rest of the incredible folks that have joined us today. And by the way, thank you all so much. Keep those comments coming. We're loving them.
I'm loving those cards because so often assistants are struggling for the words to say. Thank you for giving us the words to say.
I do have, so this has inspired me to figure out how do we leverage technology to create these bridges, because we already have the resources we need to accomplish any vision that we have. And it's the people around you. The problem is those interests and skills and expertise and projects that we're working on is either buried in a resume in someone's a virtual file cabinet or in our heads. So we need a way to share with our teams what our interests and passions, what we're working on, so that we can rally and solve any problem. And one way you can do that is through 365. And I'd love to show you where you can start by filling out your employee profile on 365, which is completely searchable by anyone in the organization. So if that would be okay, if you guys want me to show you how to do that.
So Vickie is going to give us all a live demo, and we're all going to be learning. Ready? Let's
okay,
do it,
perfect.
Vic.
So I'm already there in my profile, but the way you would get here is, if this is for 365 users, Microsoft 365 users, at the top right-hand corner is your avatar. And when you click on that, you have the option to go to your profile. And then always look for the term My Profile. And this is where I'm not going to scroll up because it has all my phone number and how to reach me and things like that, but has my contact information. But down here, it says About Me, so I can write a little bio about myself. Any projects that you're currently working on, that you have worked on in, as many as you can remember, just start filling that out. Add projects in here so that when people do a search, so when you go to office.com and search for diversity and inclusion, you can search for documents, you can search for people, you can search for comments. So that's what you want to do, is fill this out as much as you can. Your expertise. Here are my professional skills. You can also ask me about this, schools and education, interests and hobbies. So travel, lacrosse games, things like that, whatever you want to add. So fill that in as much as you can, as soon as you can, and start coming together to help fulfill the mission of any project, the organization, or any initiatives that are happening. So that's my little tip.
Thank you.
Any questions about that?
Vickie, you're going to continue with your Teams tips too, though, right?
I can. Are we good on time, or do we have any questions about
this is exactly when. I mean, I have one question about this before you continue with some more live tech demo. You know how at B2A we talk about a spreadsheet where teams of people on a staff can just look at the spreadsheet and look at the team at a glance, as opposed to having to look up people individually. Does this have that capability, and to have their SMEs, their subject matter expertise, in there?
Not as a spreadsheet, but everything now is about search. So that's the goal. Is I'm looking for someone, connected to Africa, for instance. I could type Africa and immediately find a resource in the organization.
Right.
So rather than pull up the team and then find somebody, it just immediately puts their fingers on that no, doesn't put the fingers. Anyway, gets them the information they need, the resources they need right away, versus look it up in a list.
So, you're looking for the proofreader, you're looking for the PowerPoint guru, you're looking
Somebody
for the
knows
foodie.
Spanish. Somebody knows French. Yes.
Yeah. One of our colleagues from Belgium was sharing that on the profile ends up being so useful because staff not only includes the businessy things that they are SMEs in, SME, subject matter experts, but personal ones as well. Because in this virtual world, it's really useful to have a personal connection to people. So, like someone put in that they're a feng shui expert, that they love Chinese cooking, that they're an expert in wines. It's not only nice to do, but it ends up being smart to do, because in the end, it's people working with other people. And, now you heard the connection with Karen about, her Ethiopian son. And I have in my head, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I think I want to know more about that. Let's, in our virtual coffee next time, I want to hear more. And that's how this all works best, right?
Well, and it saves money. It saves the organization money. I mean, yeah. I worked at a law firm. I've told this story many times. I worked at a law firm. The programmers went to Colorado, I think, for Crystal Reports training. They had no idea I was one of a handful of Crystal Reports instructors in the state of Texas. I was just one door down, and I know the firm's data. Yeah. So it would have been the perfect resource. And even like the wine enthusiast or the feng shui expert, if you're redesigning your offices for the, when people return back to work, you don't have to hire an external expert if you have one on staff.
Exactly. That's what we've seen, is that staff in general is not being fully leveraged. Jen, I'd like to ask you to put up Marion Freund's comment though, because Vickie, I think it'd be great if you can comment on this, because we hear about this a lot, that assistants can only, and HR, I guess, can only put as much in these profiles as companies, IT, will allow them to. What's your advice on addressing this kind of pushback from whether it's IT or management or HR?
So every team, every organization wants to reduce time and effort and costs. It costs over $10,000 to send these programmers to training. And they didn't know I was I had that skill because my resume was in a file cabinet. So what I would do is I would approach my manager or IT and said, we have a lot of expertise on our team, and there's this benefit of Office.com, of 365, that we could leverage that could save us time, effort, and money. If we knew what people were working on, if we knew what people's interests are and what their expertise is. And I don't know what the argument would be against saving money, time, and effort and bringing people together and creating an engaging team.
Mary, do you know what the objection would be?
Stupidity?
That.
Yeah. Oh, that.
I think what they would probably say is, well, it hasn't been tested, or we're worried about information getting out. It's all locked down. It's internal. So it's about them not understanding the tool well enough or seeing the business case. And it may just be presenting the business case and like, oh yeah, we could just, I didn't even know it existed. Turn it on. It just may be the fact that they didn't know it existed. So.
That's a very good point, Vickie.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked in organizations where they don't want any employees sharing anything personal about themselves. And that is very foolish, because how can you connect with people if you can't be allowed to connect with them? And the one thing during the pandemic, with so many people working remote, how many times have you been on a Zoom call where you see the kids do the Zoom bomb in the background, or by mistake, or the pets, or whatever else? And I see that it's really helped so many people warm up to others. Oh, hey, they've got a kid at home too. I've got one of my team members. She works full-time. She's a full-time wife, mother. She's now a third grade school teacher. And, you know, it's hard enough when you have to do all of that and go to your day job. But when your day job is amongst everything else, it adds so much more complexities and it creates much more mental fatigue that we all need to be much more sensitive and in tune with watching for that.
So Vic, you want to show your tips? And I'm just saying this once, you're on mute. I'm not going to say it a second time.
Thank you. Okay, so I am going to show you a way that you can collect information from your team. Now, don't freak out because you see all these different polls on the screen. I'll talk about what they are in just a second. But in Teams, you have the ability to create a quick poll within a team chat. So if you're in a discussion, you could just click new discussion and then click on what's called forms. And you can create a quick poll, like lunch preference, favorite school, do you receive notifications? Do you need access to the COVID vax? What would you like to discuss in the meeting today? Anything. So we've done a couple of different scenarios. So all I want you to remember is the polls are within the chat within Teams. And it's called forms. So when you're looking for the tool, it's not called polls, it's called forms, and it creates a poll for you within a chat. The reason why I'm saying this is because I am currently I'm showing you a meeting. I went to my calendar and I opened up the meeting. The meeting is not, I haven't even joined the meeting yet. Or this might be the history of the meeting. But in the calendar, you'll see these tabs across the top called chat, files, details, meeting notes, whiteboard. Typically, polls is not added to a tab. You have to click on the plus sign and click on polls or forums, and it will add this tab to the top, and it will show you all the polls that were asked for that meeting. And Karen was talking about she has I think weekly meetings. Yeah, so she has a weekly meeting with the steering committee. And so it's probably a recurring meeting that you could have these polls stay with the meeting. So this is the history of the polls. That's why you see some of them are closed, some of them are live, some of them are draft. And so I just want to kind of show you a couple, and I'll show you how to create these. But this one is closed. The way you close a poll is you click on that drop down, and you can say close poll. And then once a poll is closed, then you have the option to export it and then remove the poll. You can tell whether a poll is anonymous or not. So you can just collect anonymous responses from people. So you can see that right now this is a live one. This is not anonymous. So my colleagues will know how I answered this. And the organizer will know how I answered this. This one's not anonymous. This one is draft only. I could see this. So when I'm ready, I can click launch. And then this one right here allows for multiple selections. So I could say, pick the top 3 things you would like to discuss in the meeting today. And then you could select the 3 things and it submits it. For this one, you can choose whether people see the results ahead of time or not. If you don't want people to be influenced by how others voted, you could say only show results after someone has submitted the poll. So let me show you how this is done. So again, I'm in the calendar and I went to launch this. So let me go to the next slide. I'm going to show you a couple. I can't show you my live environment because of privacy issues. So remember I said you'll see the polls within chat. So when in doubt, go to the chat for that meeting. So you can see I'm in my chat area of Teams and I see my meeting chat. And then at the very top over here are the tabs again. And then I see the polls and I can view these polls. Let me do another spot. People ask about the whiteboard. So this whiteboard is active during the meeting. So anyone that's part of the meeting can contribute to the whiteboard if we needed to do that. And let me show you how I get there. So I went to my calendar in Teams. I clicked on the calendar item, and I'm going to show you two areas. I'm going to show you this one right here. This is the expand option, and then this is chat with participants. So when you click the expand option, that takes you to the back end of that meeting, and there are the tabs again: chat, files, details. Notice you don't see the polls up there. So what you're going to do is you're going to click that plus sign, and then you say add a tab, and you're looking for the app called Forms. So Forms is the name of the app in order to create a poll. So then you add that Forms, and it will say polls at the top. I know it's confusing, but it's Forms is the app, polls is the name of the tab. Now, if I click on my appointment in Teams and say chat with participants, this is the area. Oh, that's it. That is where you go to see. Let me go back here. Oh, I guess I don't have it. Maybe I go over here. Oh, I can't show you because I have the private area. So let me just show you how to create it. So I can't go to my meeting to the chat, but remember, go to that chat, the chat area of that meeting, and you'll see those tabs across the top. So let me show you how to create the poll. So I'm going to go to new conversation, and I'm in just a team chat right now. I'm not in a meeting chat. So I'm in a team chat. I go start a new conversation, and then I do see Forms here. So if I don't see Forms, I can click here and I could search for Forms, but I need that Forms option. So you can type in here Forms, but I have it right there. The suspense is killing me. Okay. It doesn't normally take this long. It's so, and then they'll suggest options. If it's a yes, no question, it'll suggest options. So you can say add all, and you can add more options. This is where you can say multiple answers. So they can, if they can answer multiple times, submit multiple answers, you can check that. Share results automatically after voting is automatically selected. And then you could say keep responses anonymous if you don't want, if you want just anonymous responses. That means the organizer won't be able to see who responded either. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And then this, and I'll hit send. I already hit send. And then what will happen is it'll pop up in the actual team in this channel. And that is a channel poll. So that will be live within the channel. The same thing, you do the same exact thing in a team meeting. So here is that poll. So it's a great way to kind of get everyone's pulse on a particular topic, find out what people want for lunch, whatever the case may be. So that is my demo.
And someone is saying that it looks easier than Zoom, and it looks like there's more capability than Zoom. What do you have to say about that, Vic? Is it?
Well, I will say, so Forms, the app itself has two functions. Within Teams, when you launch a form within Teams, it becomes a poll. You can also go online to office.com here, and if you look for Forms, you can create a survey similar to a Google form. You can create a longer survey if you need to do that. It's super intuitive. You just create a new form, and then it'll give you a link to share that with your employees. You can also, I can take a poll here. I'm waiting for the options to come up. I can come over here. If I'm not getting the responses I need, I can come over here and say copy link, and email it to people and say, hey, I just posted a form in the channel. And I'm going to close the poll in 30 minutes. If you could take that, respond to that poll. So lots of options.
You know what? One thing that I've even noticed, and I'm not the techie in the pair between Vickie and me, in case you haven't noticed, but since the pandemic began, we heard from so many executive assistants who were panicking in getting up to speed on Teams. That you were all given the software, in like late 2019 or early 2020. And yes, like just yesterday, I was doing an event and we used Teams for the presentation, but yesterday of April of 2021 was the first day that they used the whiteboard and the polling capability, and there was some fear about it all. So I'm wondering, Mary, Karen, do you have comments about what you just saw and about what's happening?
I do. Office 365 has got so many things. And as I was watching Vickie navigate there, I was thinking, I need to take an Office 365 class myself. I need to teach myself a little bit more. But Teams is a great tool at my company as well. We're just really starting to dig in. It was during the pandemic that we really started to dig into that. And, our IT organization has taken away some of the other tools and accesses that we have to implement Teams as our main function and robustness. So, yeah, there's many things to learn in Teams, isn't there, in the Office 365 suite. So, love Teams, but getting to know it takes a while.
And I think that even if we think that we've pretty much mastered it, there are always additional things that we can learn. And that's one of the things I love about sharing and talking with others is, what are some of the things that you like about it? What do you use the most? Because that's where I always pick up great tidbits and tools and nuggets of gold.
Yeah, and we have, I also created a group. We work internationally, and so we do a best practices, tips, and tricks meeting every other week. And the other thing I wanted to note too, on my steering committee meetings and my professional development meetings, I don't want to scare people away with too much time commitment. So it wasn't weekly, Vickie. It was bi-monthly if we're doing something, and monthly. So please, don't think of weekly, and don't want to scare people away with time commitments.
I wondered that, because as soon as I said it, I'm like, that seems like a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot, because you have to, and the part of that too is you have to have actionable items. Don't forget, when you're doing these meetings, in 2 weeks' time or a month times, you want to come back and succeed at doing a task to move it forward.
I'd like to circle back to a point that we were talking about earlier, and Marion's point about, where assistants are not always permitted, and Mary validated it, not being permitted to put personal things. And it's not only personal, but how much information can be on a shared drive, which of course belongs to the company. Karen, can you confirm that you've been in this business a long time as an EA? I know from my time as an EA, forever it's been haphazard. Just like Vickie was saying, how no one knew that she was a crystal supports expert. Like with EAs, that we just happen to know on our teams, Karen, don't we? Who knows the when you drive the envelopes and who's the expert in Word? Who's the expert
in StreamYard? Like,
I think it's the technology that's getting us there, though, isn't it? Because we just had our own subgroups. Like, I've never seen this before, where you could put your hobbies in your profile too. So it's all about the education. So yeah, I think it's great. And as far as HR is concerned about what someone puts in their personal profile, I don't see a reason why there would be a big concern about that, because people can, if it's in their personal profile, they should be able to say what they would like to. Right, Mary? She's like,
I was thinking about mail merge before. Mail merge, like who's the mail merge person? There always seems to be somebody
right?
on the team. But my point is, we can't be haphazard anymore.
Yeah.
It can't be haphazard that we know who the experts are on our team, who know how to do whatever, because there's so much to know. And so, Mary, that do you feel like HR is ready to hear this kind of stuff from EAs about the real business case need to share this kind of info? Do you think that's true? Are they ready?
Bonnie, whether or not they're ready, they need to hear it. And, you know, for adult learning, sometimes it takes 10, 12, or 15 times for someone to hear it, read it, and see it before they're ready to take action on it. So if you bring it up once and nothing happens, don't give up. Keep bringing it up. And at some point, yes, everybody will be ready to take action and move forward. But initially, it might be a bit of a battle. I'm sorry, but it may be.
So as we head towards the end of our very fast 90 minutes, Mary, what's important for this audience to know about HR? What should EAs know about what's happening in HR that would help them bridge to you all better?
Understand the strategic vision and goals of the organization, because that's really what's going to drive everything. Understand the business of your business. What does your business do? How does your business make money? You need to know and understand the organization and the business. That's how you can really help HR and keep focusing on those goals and those metrics to drive towards those finish lines, and be willing to speak up, be bold, and be afraid of nothing. Except for snakes.
Spiders.
Karen, what about you? When HR folks are listening to this podcast in these next weeks and months, what should they know about EAs? What do you want them to know?
Oh, I want them to know, and they should know, that we are a team inside of your organization that can really help you build even further the goals of what the company has. On many levels, you know, I think that culture, to be able to, you know, have a great culture means to have everyone in the organization, you know, happy and being able to be a team member. So it only strengthens our communities, our way of being together by including and being inclusive of everyone. And so, you know, with the EA organization, you know, teams help them to, you know, learn to be able to have that mentorship within other EAs like myself, where I love to have somebody reach out to me and you know, listen to me, to be able to help and bring them forward. So, and it's about HR, you know, maybe looking to, you know, create this sub team like we have at Takeda, which is a steering committee with these really high performing administrators to be able to mentor and help and learn the other ones that do need that extra help. So that's what I would say. Let's all help each other in this world and this organizations and our organizations.
Karen, any last thoughts for our time together?
Well, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Vickie. And thank you, Mary. I think this was an excellent time spent together. And I hope that everyone that has been listening and will listen to this, you know, they walk away with even one or two great things that'll help them in their journey in the EA world. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Mary, how about you? What final words do you have of wisdom for our listeners and viewers?
It's all about people. It's all about each and every one of you. And I'm so thankful for you, and I'm so thankful for your journey. And I wish you the utmost success in your journey. Find your passion, live it, enjoy each and every day.
It's great advice. And both Mary's and Karen's LinkedIn profiles are in the chat, and they invite you to connect with them. And wow, I mean, if you're looking for a top expert in HR, you look no further than Mary. And Karen has been doing her work as an EA and she is generous. She too is generously offering herself. Vickie, what about you? Do you have, I'd love for you to share as part of your closing remarks about, what's being revealed about people in this pandemic in terms of their tech savviness.
Yeah, first I want to thank Mary and Karen for being here and giving us examples of how to bridge that relationship and create a partnership between the EA network, EAs and HR. And I apologize if you hear my 17-year-old. Do you hear him at all? No, okay, he's just yelling at the computer. But I'm so grateful for you guys sharing your stories and your experiences and ideas. So, I mean, what's happened, obviously, has been accelerated digital transformation in the past year, and nobody even thought that we'd have to learn all of these tech skills so quickly in a condensed amount of time. Mm-hmm. And, as we share our screens, as you saw me, as I'm sharing my screen with you, you saw there was a delay. You could see my confidence in navigating my computer, and that's what's on display for everybody. It's a very vulnerable position to be in. Even me being, I'm techie and I'm on mute. It's so revealing now that our skills are being exposed. So I just urge you all to, you don't have to rely on people like me. You can. One little tip within the technology, especially with 365, at the bottom, even in Teams, at the bottom left-hand corner of Teams, there's a question mark, and you could see what's new, training, topics. So don't wait for an invitation to get trained on these tools. Look for the question mark within each of the technology tools and go out and fill in those gaps so that you can confidently and gracefully navigate around your computer and teach other people. So those are my comments about that.
Well,
Thanks,
Vickie,
Mom.
thank you. And Karen Peloquin, thank you so much for being here. And Mary Cheddie, thank you for being here. It is absolutely crystal clear that we need to collaborate more between executive assistants and human resources. That historically, with executive assistants, it had been, like you get a job and then that's the end of that. There's no training, and those days are long over. So assistants need to advocate and speak up, as Mary said, for themselves. And hopefully we have enlightened HR professionals who are ready, willing, and able to receive ideas and requests for training. Now, Vickie Evans runs the Red Cape Academy, which so many of our B2Ers are on the call right now. Vickie understands this landscape better than anybody I know, and she used to be an assistant, so that's part of it. Please do yourself a favor and go to redcapeco.com to check out Vickie's services, because you cannot get up to speed in a heartbeat, and it's so many assistants. Karen, I'm sure you're part of it, that we were self-taught, right? That we were self-taught. Most assistants know. Mary, perhaps you were self-taught, right? Yeah. So our leaders need to really know, in no uncertain terms, that training is absolutely necessary. It's a new day. We are at a moment right now. And that is the reason why we're doing this podcast today. And we will continue to do this podcast, because the landscape is changing in front of our eyes. The future is happening right this minute. And we need to involve the experience of Mary and the Karens of the world and Vickie to work together so that we can go forward and have our companies be strong and stable, with people who really know what they're doing and not having to fumble about because they suffer from a lack of training. Yeah. So thank you all for joining today. And if you have gotten something out of it, please take the recording and give it to your HR professionals and your leaders and your colleagues so that they too can benefit from what we talked about today. I don't know about you, I have goosebumps right now. I feel like the future is so exciting if we can grab a hold of this tiger that's like kind of running And we just have to take control of what's going on.
Very good.
Everybody good?
I'm
Anything
good
burning?
with Bonnie, for sure.
All right. Jen, I hope you've gotten a lot of great screenshots. I think, Vickie, if you can bring us home, I thank all of our listeners for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Well, that concludes today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions or topic ideas, visit the podcast page at betheultimateassistant.com. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Thank you to our guests, Mary and Karen, for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.